Good afternoon to everybody and warm welcome to the weekend live stream here from our Vogan Weather HQ in Rossshire. Hope everybody is doing well this afternoon, enjoying your weekend so far. I'm just realising, looking at the camera, I'm looking rather orange or red depending on what way you're looking at this. Yeah, it's coming up as red. Looking bright this afternoon. So how is everybody? Welcome to the 156th edition of the Global Weather Report. We have lots to discuss, as is always the case on these live streams, looking at the global picture, looking at all the weather headlines of the past 7 days or so. Good afternoon to Seafood and Eat It, and good afternoon to our very own Paul James. Hope you have enjoyed your time off, my friend. Had some time to relax, recoup, recharge the batteries and whatnot. Good afternoon to Lindsay Vogan, and good afternoon to Braemar, Ballater, D-side and Donside weather as well. Hope you are doing well as well, my friend. So as Lindsay says, remember to hit that like button. It lets myself and YouTube know that you're enjoying the content here on this channel. Lots of varied content, has to be said, on Vogan Weather here on YouTube. I'm trying to provide a unique space, something a little bit different to other channels, other weather channels. Obviously, we are now going to start to gradually pick things up with regards to winter discussion. We've got the likelihood of a negative Indian Ocean dipole. It looks as if La Nina is going to redevelop. We've got a very warm Atlantic with a cold blob in the central North Atlantic that appears to have developed. That will be interesting to see how that materializes and changes over the next several weeks or so. More and more on that coming up, folks. So be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already done so. The channel is slowly growing, which I'm pleased to see. But there is a lot of background work going on here to try and deliver unique, unhyped, unbiased, level-headed and balanced weather content here on marvoganweather.com on YouTube. And also check out marvoganweather.com as well. We've got monthly outlooks. We've got the other articles as well to look at as well. So, yes, there is a lot of hard work getting put into the channel and to the website to keep things as interesting as possible. So it looks as if we've got a fairly busy chat at this moment in time. So we've got Lindsay and Paul in on the moderating team this afternoon. So a massive appreciation for your support. I do greatly appreciate it, guys, very much indeed. Good afternoon to Paul Farwell, Jack Lowe, David Vogan, the Train and Nature Show. Good afternoon to yourself. So yes, it is a fairly active chat this afternoon. We've got 22 concurrent viewers at the moment. So yes, hit that like button. Would be much appreciated. How has everybody's week been? Have you had a good week? Are you enjoying your weekend? What's the weather like? It looks as if we've got this next bank of cloud coming in off the Atlantic. That appears to be quite an ongoing story as we ended summer and began autumn, and it certainly is distinctly autumnal for sure. By the way, there was two, not one, but two videos yesterday. We had the Tropical Outlook that was released just before 5 p.m, and then there was a bonus video released at around 9 p.m. last night, looking at particularly the 2023 September heat wave, which was really when I look back at it, it was more impressive than I really, I suppose, gave it credit for. The amount of all-time September records that were set back around between the 7th and the 9th of September 2023 is anywhere from Caithness and Sutherland all the way down into the East Anglia and southeast of England. We've seen all-time September records broken. In terms of, we looked at also cold records for the month of September, and that you have to go back to the 90s and then even beyond that. The last time we've seen some really notable widespread cold in the month of September. Be interested to see how this September pans out. Looks quite mobile as we pretty much all know. We've got one system after another coming in. In between weather systems, we do have clear skies, lighter winds. We're seeing the temperatures coming down, some patchy frost in a few places as well. But also in 2020, we're seeing a temperature of -5 at Altnahar, and that was the coldest September night for the UK since 1997. So check out that that video, should I say, that was released last night. A little bonus video, like I say, looking at some of the extremes, even talking about the weather spells during the month of September as well. So check that out. And then obviously we've got a full week of European weather content to look into in the coming week ahead. So plenty of reasons to stick around. Good afternoon to Jack Lowe as well. So what is everybody saying this afternoon? So Paul's saying, in fact, let's start off by Seafood and Eat It, who was the first person on the live chat. Good afternoon, Mark, and all from a dry and windy Isle of Skye, beautiful part of the world, it has to be said. There's a video, an advert just popped up there. And if the adverts are popping up in the live, I do apologise for that. So, yes, hello, sir, says Braemar, Ballot and Deeside Weather. Chris is also saying ramming the Sunday roast in the oven before I sit down. Fantastic. You enjoy that, Chris, and your family as well later on. Been nice, Mark. Needed it, says Paul, in reference to me saying I hope you had a good week off. When are you back to work, Paul? I'm assuming it's tomorrow. But yeah, I'm glad you had some nice relaxation during the past week. Jack Lowe saying, hi, Mark, and all. Thank you for the varied content, Mark. It's appreciated, my friend. Thank you very much, Jack. That is your kind words, my friend, is appreciated as well. And it's folks like yourself and others that do appreciate what's being delivered here. It just drives me on to continue to provide the content for everybody. So yes, thank you for that, David saying. So Dad, hello, Mark, from a wet and cold Kirkintilloch. At 9 p.m. this morning, the car was showing only 9 Celsius. Yes, definitely. And the autumnal feel, we, believe it or not, Dad, had the heating on last night. We're out at the cinema. We had a nice Burger King dinner, and then trundled over the car park into the cinema to watch The Conjuring 2, which was pretty decent. It was actually a decent film. I think Lindsay will agree with that. But yeah, when we came out of the cinema last night, the temperatures were in single figures. And here at Vogan Weather HQ, the temperature dropped to around 4.7 Celsius this morning. I don't know exactly how cold it got, maybe in the Central Highlands or the North Highlands, for example. We'll maybe have a wee look at that in a second. But yeah, definitely the heating was put on last night. And even when we got up late this morning, it just felt as if there was a kind of cool, kind of damp feeling in the air. I thought, maybe it's just me, but it seems to be coming a little bit quicker this year in terms of that kind of autumn-like chill in the air. So, and the Train of Nature Show, good afternoon, Mark, and everyone from a soggy Derbyshire. Another beautiful part of the world, it has to be said. Paul Farwell saying off to Antalya and Turkey tomorrow for a week. Oh, fantastic stuff. Not jealous in the slightest, Paul. Hope you enjoy your time over in hopefully sunny Antalya, which I think it will be. Sunny and warm. Still managed to hold on to that warmth a little bit longer, it feels, in especially coastal areas of Turkey. We are starting to gradually see winter gain control of the high latitudes. We're starting to increase the snow. We're seeing the first -10s in Canada and Russia, for example. So yeah, a sign of things to come, I think. It'll be interesting to see actually here, even at the house. I'm curious to see if that is our last of 20 Celsius. It looks as if when you look at the forecast, we've got kind of mid-teens, maybe some high teens over the next week or two. So I'm curious to see whether that's us done for 20 Celsius this year. I think we've been pretty close to 50 days above 20 Celsius this year. It really has been a decent summer, I must admit. So, yeah. And Jack saying thanks for moderating Paul and Lindsay. Yeah, it's very appreciated. Richard Gray, hi Mark. Windy and rainy up on Dartmoor today, but not as bad as forecast. Thanks very much, Richard, for your update. I think our very good friend Richard Trott is down in sunny La Pineda in Spain. He's having his annual holiday down in the northeast of Spain, so I hope Richard has a good time down there and some relaxation. I know Richard works incredibly hard, with his work, and certainly in need of a little break. So I'm glad that Richard is down enjoying some time in Spain as we speak. So yeah, Lindsay's saying we had to put the heating on last night when we got home from the cinema at around 9 p.m. Adam Blunston, good evening to you, or good afternoon, should I say. Hi everyone, and hi Mark. Do you think we will have a wet September followed by a cold winter? It's certainly leaning, Adam, towards a wetter September, especially the further west and southwest you go over the UK. I would say, with regards to wetness, we still remain relatively dry compared to average up here in the north, but we do tend to be sheltered from the hills to the west and southwest of this location. When you get a west to southwesterly flow, a lot of that moisture gets wrung out in the hills to our west. So we tend to have a bit of a rain shadow effect, I would say. I've lived up here now permanently for 5 years, or just over 5 years, back in July. And I've noticed our wettest weather comes from the east. When you get low pressure to the south, you get the winds coming around the top of that low, and you've got no natural barrier for the moisture to come in. Funnels through the Souters and up through the Cromarty Firth, and we tend to find our wettest weather. Definitely, when I look at my records, the easterly flow is definitely the wettest for us. A west-southwesterly flow doesn't tend to be. But yeah, sorry, to answer your question, I would say that we are leaning towards wetter than average for September, especially when you look at this here, by the way, that I put out on social media yesterday. So obviously this was the past 72 hours across the UK. So quite wet in the southeast, Wales, North England, southern Scotland, western side of Ireland as well. This was obviously released back yesterday. This is off the ECMWF for the next couple of weeks. Sunday, this takes out to Sunday the 28th of September. Wettest in the west, if you notice. The GFS model out to Sunday the 20th is showing some fairly healthy amounts of rain, and we've already seen a decent amount of rain so far this month. Aussie winter's colder and snowy than here, laugh out loud, says Vags Divs, I think that is. Good afternoon to Alan Jeffs as well. What Australia with the coldest winter with all this global warming? Never. So yeah, it was the coldest winter in Australia since 2012, which is quite interesting, as the title in the today's live stream suggests. Yeah, Lindsay's saying got up late. Yeah, I actually lay in bed till mid-afternoon. It was actually quite nice just to chill out. Had a bacon roll and a coffee in bed, and I must admit it was very pleasant to have a relaxation day. Luca Marinkovic says, I think that is it, says hello Mark. So good afternoon to Luca. Thanks for tuning in, my friend. Fish and chips with a tub of curry. Dad is having this evening. You enjoy that. I'm sure you will. So Jack Lowe saying great week, Mark. Thanks. Very heavy rain in Warwickshire. Got the log burner on. Beautiful, Jack. I certainly would quite like to have a log burner as well, I must admit. Maybe one day we'll get one. So yeah, we've got 27 concurrent viewers. Hit that like button. That lets myself and YouTube know that you're enjoying the content here on this channel. So let's crack on then. Bali has been hit by a deluge over the past working week. Reports of up to 15 inches of rainfall within a 24-hour period. Hardest hit areas in the south of the volcanic island, bang slap in the middle of the Greater Sunda chain within Indonesia. Lindsay and I have had the pleasure of being in Bali, in South Bali, in the Kuta area of Denpasar, which is the capital of Bali. We were there in September 2022, and all being well, we will be staying in the north side of Bali come next May. So, yeah, beautiful part of the world, but very hard hit by devastating floods during the course of the week. So you can see here some of these images from DW News showing the extent of the floods. Now, I think what's happened here is, yes, you've got a deluge over South Bali, but because the island is almost like a kind of cone shape where you've got all the high terrain over the central portion with this kind of slope effect, both north, west, east and south of the island, probably what's happened here is we've had tremendous amounts of rain. The MJO, the Man-Julian Oscillation, has been very active over this region of the tropics, and therefore that enhances rainfall in this part of the world. And what's happened perhaps is a deluge over the central and southern portions of the island, but a lot of runoff has then swept into the Denpasar region of Bali, and that's a very urbanized area. It's very highly congested with tourism, a lot of resorts and whatnot, but they probably runoff from the hills to the north has probably led to a worsened situation here in Bali. But certainly some of the tourists that were caught up and essentially stranded on the island. But yeah, some say that it's the worst floods in decades for Bali. Look at this video here. Even flash flooding doesn't stop the scooters from running. But check this out here. This is from AccuWeather. So like I say, 15 inches of rainfall, and so 380 something millimeters of rainfall within a 24-hour period. And remember, this is a fairly wet part of the world anyway. It's within the deep tropics, but this is pretty exceptional stuff. So, yep, 15 inches within 24 hours, daily flooding. I believe there is at least 15, possibly 20 folks that have lost their lives due to the flooding. Let me just show you this video quickly that I uploaded as a short on my channel back during the course of the week. And I'll show you that. This was sent to me by my friend Martin, who lives in South Bali.
Hassanuddin Bridge. Hassanuddin Bridge on September 10th, yes. Hassanuddin Bridge. Hassanuddin Bridge.
So yeah, pretty severe flooding. There was also homes or a building that I seen actually collapse into the water as well. So yeah, very, very nasty stuff as well. So let's crack on then and see what else is happening. So these were the records, by the way, globally over the last 24 hours. We had a couple up into the northwest of North America, temperatures down to near daily low record of 6.7 up in Alaska, Haines, with a record cold temperature 1.1 Celsius. In the far west of Alaska, we had a few records. Very warm temperatures recently up in Scandinavia and Arctic portions of Finland, which has been quite interesting, but not a huge amount of records fallen. Did have actually a record near daily low temperature, 23 Celsius, on the island of Borneo, which I think is the Papua New Guinea side rather than the Indonesia side, I believe, anyway, if I'm right in saying. Record temperature up in just up, well, somewhere within the North Pacific, it looks like. These are the temperatures. In fact, let's go to the visible satellite imagery then. This is currently over Europe. So there's that deep low that some media outlets were suggesting this was Storm Amy. I don't think it's quite reached the criteria to name that storm, and obviously the Met Office made mention of that on the their live stream on Friday afternoon at 12:15, that this system will not be named, but we could be seeing some gusty winds in parts of coastal southwest England, Wales, Ireland as well, even up through the Irish Sea. Probably quite choppy conditions for ferries through the Irish Sea, North Channel, perhaps not quite as much, and then through the English Channel as well. We're probably seeing some fairly significant waves here. Also, looking at the latest radar imagery then, and you can see we've got this band of heavy precipitation associated with this storm's cold front that is now probably, well, it's exiting Ireland and Northern Ireland now and is now moving into the west of Scotland. We've also got some fairly heavy and persistent rain, probably wind-driven rain as well, incorporating a good swathe of the southwest of the British Isles and southern England. Also, let's have another view. We've got some fairly active weather over southern portions of Norway, Sweden, shower activity over Denmark. We've got another frontal system that is moving in through the southern regions of Sweden. We've also got some heavy precipitation moving in the eastern areas of Europe as well. But if we look at the UK and Ireland specifically, this is how it's looking. So, yep, looking like a rather soggy day for Dad down in Kirkintilloch. But Western Highland region, we're probably seeing some very decent amounts of rain, especially as that moisture bumps into up into the higher terrain of Argyll, for example. Lomond and Trossachs is probably seeing a thoroughly soggy day. And then also into a good swathe of East South Wales, Midlands, East Anglia. We've got some fairly wet conditions to be had on this late Sunday afternoon. Temperature-wise, it's no great shakes by any stretch for September. These are the temperatures, probably close to maximum temperatures actually, and we're only stuck in generally low to mid-teens up and down the length and breadth of the country. Much, much fresher conditions now into the south of the UK. It felt as if day after day, week after week during the course of the summer, just temperatures couldn't get below 20 Celsius. It's certainly a big change now compared to what we've seen just a few weeks ago. Looking at the current temperatures from Europe point of view, and you've got generally mid-teens across Norway, Sweden, Finland, a little bit of warmth here up into the northwest of Russia, for example. We're seeing temperatures close to 20 Celsius all the way up into the Arctic region of Russia, and then down into Greece, into Turkey. We're seeing temperatures into the low, even mid-30s this afternoon, and again low to mid-30s down in the south central regions of Spain. Even into Portugal, we've got Faro, for example, sitting on 27 Celsius. Not too shabby at all by any stretch. Looking at the global temperatures then, and you can see that we have got still some intense heat to be had across the north of Africa, for example. It's been pretty hot in places such as Agadir in recent times. I think temperatures in the low to mid-30s in Agadir, especially when you get a wind coming in out of the east, and offshore wind, so wind going from the land out towards the Atlantic. That's when you get the hottest conditions in places such as Agadir, the Canary Islands as well, for example. But you can see here current temperatures, 40 Celsius in just inland from the Atlantic and in Morocco. We've got the mid to high 30s, low 40s across much of Algeria, and then we've got generally upper 20s, low 30s through sub-Saharan Africa. And obviously we've got the easterly waves that are transiting from east to west across Africa, moving out into the Atlantic basin. We'll look at the tropics in a little second. Got temperatures into the upper 30s, low 40s in Egypt. Then as we move into the Middle East, starting to gradually, ever so slightly, see those temperatures coming down from daily mid to high 40s. We're starting to see kind of upper 30s, low 40s. So at this time of the year, you start to see the Middle East beginning to gradually, it's a gradual process of seeing this region of the world cooling down. Good afternoon to Turbo Stream. And I'm going to butcher this name, and I do apologise, Hewlin, but I know that's not the right pronunciation. So sorry about that. But it is good to see you folks on the chat this afternoon. So zooming back out, you can see here generally upper 20s, low 30s. We've seen a very robust Indian monsoon and even Southeast Asian monsoon in 2025. It's been very wet up through eastern China. We still have a very active Mayu front in eastern China, and then again the usual kind of temperatures within the tropics and subtropics. Down into Australia, where it's been a cool winter, we're seeing temperatures rather chilly. We had gales and heavy rainfall in the Perth area over the last couple of days, and we're gradually starting to see things warming up in the north of Australia as we get deeper into the springtime, but still holding on to some fairly chilly numbers in the southeast populated areas of the country. And then as we move into New Zealand and New Zealand, North and South Island, we've got the relatively fresh temperatures at this hour. Looking at North America then, we'll go back onto the Meteosil site. And you can see here that we've got some building warmth again into the central and the eastern portion of the United States. We had the coldest beginning to September since 2008. And when you incorporate the final week of August and the first week of September, it actually was a record cold period around the parts of the Midwest and the Great Lakes region of the United States, as well as Canada. So quite an interesting chilly end to what has been a rather innocuous summer in terms of extremity. I think it was the 10th warmest summer on record for the United States. It was actually, I believe, the coolest summer on the east coast of the United States since 2014 as well. So that's an interesting one to consider also. Let's have a look at the global lightning so far. So we've got 30 active areas in the fairly typical spots. We've got some interesting lightning activity over central Algeria, which is interesting. Got some plenty of lightning activity from parts of southeast Russia, Russia's far east, southern portions of Japan, in the eastern China, and then points north of the Philippines. We've got some fairly wet conditions currently and over the next week in the Philippines, so we could be seeing some flooding issues there, some lightning activity south of Australia and parts of Indonesia. Then if we zoom into Africa, you can see here quite far north this lightning activity that's extended from the tropics, which is normal, into the sub-portion of the Sahara and then into the central region of Algeria. We've got some fairly interesting lightning displays ongoing at the moment. We've got a couple over the southern Atlas Mountains of Morocco as well. Got a little bit out over the Atlantic associated with a fairly strong tropical wave that has to be looked at quite carefully. Speaking of tropical wave, this is what they're looking at with NHC now, a 70% chance of development. Check out the tropical outlook from yesterday if you're interested in a little bit more in-depth tropical discussion. But this is the latest visible or infrared imagery, should I say. So there's that feature there that is highlighted as a 70% chance of developing over the next 7 days or so here. So it's generally quite a large envelope of convective activity stretching from close to the equator all the way up to just west of the Cabo Verde Islands. We've got more convection exiting Africa. We've also got a lot of activity here that is an old frontal system that is stretched from the eastern side of North Carolina all the way to the east of Newfoundland. What's happened is, and this was discussed in yesterday's tropical outlook, that we've got the main high within the subtropics more over towards the Azores, and we're seeing a lot of energy riding around the western periphery of that high. So we've not had as much high pressure over the Bermuda side of the subtropical Atlantic, and therefore we've had a lot of weather coming around the center point of the high, which has been closer to the eastern Atlantic. We've had a lot of energy riding around it, and then been kind of riding the north side of the high. So obviously we've got westerly winds to the north of the high, we've got easterly winds underneath to the south of the high. This is quite nicely depicted, by the way. I came across this global precipitation measurement. This is from NASA, and if we play through this, you can see here that very nicely the movement of the atmosphere. So there's those systems piling into the UK, Ireland, western areas of Europe here. But you can see here the activity over Africa, beginning over the Ethiopian highlands, moving west with the trade winds. Obviously, we've got a mid-level jet stream, the easterly African easterly jet. So the AEJ is transporting these waves within the atmosphere across the equatorial belt of Africa, move out into the Atlantic. But because of the high being over the eastern side of the Atlantic near the Azores, that high has been generating a northeasterly wind and dragging in very dry, dusty air off Morocco, even Algeria, out into the Atlantic. And that dry air has been then getting forced south and then choking off these waves that are moving off Africa out into the Atlantic basin. So there's been funky things going on within the global tropics. Last year, remember, the intertropical convergence zone that where the trade winds meet was much further north than normal during the latter half of August, early September last year. We're seeing funky things this year as well, and it could be because we've expanded the Hadley cell, the subtropical high, further north, and it's been kind of changing the equation of the atmosphere, so to speak. But this is a very nice, even beautiful representation of Earth's atmosphere fluidity. You can see quite clearly in the tropics the easterly flow, then around the north side of the that high pressure belt. You can see the flow moving westerly towards Europe and also towards northwestern portions of North America as well here. So quite a nice view of the movement of moisture within the atmosphere. So let's move on then. In terms of Australia, this was an interesting tweet here from Weather Zone saying that there's still a healthy snow depth, almost 2 metres at the highest reaches of the Australian Alpine region as we near the end of the second week of September. So certainly looking very healthy in terms of snow amounts in Australia, and this is certainly good news, I would imagine, as we head into the deeper into the springtime. But it looks as if it's going to be a cool and wet spring with a negative IOD and a developing La Nina for Australia. So that would obviously be good news to an extent. Interesting, Sydney, Canberra and Wollongong have all had their wettest day in 2025. Sydney's total of 122 millimetres within 24 hours up until 9 a.m. Thursday was the city's heaviest daily rainfall total for September since 1879. So it was a real soaker down in that southeast corner of Australia during the course of Thursday of last week. And basically this is all coinciding with this kind of cool and wet theme overall down in Australia. It looks as if it's going to be a cool, wet spring for many parts of Australia, which is quite interesting. So let me just see here. There was something else I was trying to show. Back to the United States, and this is an interesting tweet here by BAM Weather. So this very time last week, kept a little red robin in the garden, kept catching my eye, and he's doing the exact same thing. So it must be checking up on me to make sure that I'm doing the right job here in the live stream. But it's interesting how he's reappeared almost the exact same time as last week on the stream. So it's always nice to see nature, I must admit. But anyway, BAM Weather. The last 2 weeks, so this is from a few days ago, Last 2 weeks have marked the coldest end to August, start of September on record for much of the Ohio Valley and the Great Lakes. So that's quite interesting as well, isn't it? So not everywhere on the planet is overcooked by any stretch of the imagination. So yes, in terms of the tropics, this is how it's looking then. We've actually got a tropical storm, Mario, south of the Baja California, the Atlantic. Yes, we've got an invest area. No, I don't know if it's actually an invest, is it? Bear with a second here. Is this an invest? So no, this region of convection has got a 70% chance, but it's not actually an invest area. But it's interesting here, Indian Ocean, Atlantic, nothing, and only Tropical Storm Mario off the west coast of Mexico, and an invest area 98W is present just to the west of Luzon in the Philippines. So in other words, we're on the 14th of September, and the tropics globally are essentially quiet, which is pretty remarkable. So we'll wait and see. We'll continue to monitor the tropics, both in the Atlantic as well as globally, as we progress through the next wee while or so here. Also wanted to show you this. This is kind of the drought narrative from a global perspective. A little bit difficult to see. I appreciate that. So kind of just bear with. If you're watching on your smart TV, for example, it might be a little bit easier to see this. But you can see here a very dry west of Europe. UK, the majority of the UK remains drier than average. I'll be interested to see if this starts to change as we move through the rest of September into the heart of autumn. Very dry across parts of Norway and Sweden. A little bit wetter up across the north, as you can see here. Western Russia, it's been very wet, actually, across many portions of northern Asia, southern Asia, into the east of China. Much of China is actually looking rather wet, if you notice here. But I thought this was an interesting graphic that I intended to show you last week. Much of Russia is actually looking quite dry, but if you look at the precipitation anomaly, it's actually looking like the past, 90 to 120 days, it's actually been quite wet. But look at China. Look at Mongolia, away from the west of Mongolia, that is. Look at much of Kazakhstan, it's been quite wet. Then as you move into parts of Afghanistan and Iran, it's been quite dry. Soil moisture. Look at Saudi Arabia, that's interesting. Look at Ethiopia. Look at in the South Sudan, for example. We've seen some fairly heavy rainfall in recent times, and then it's looking drier the further west over Africa you go. So that's quite interesting to see here. But really what's caught my attention is India, in the much of China and East Asia. Look at Indonesia, it's looking rather healthy. But this is the drought narrative. So it does to an extent go hand in hand with rainfall, but I suppose normal wet areas would have healthier soil moisture than other areas, I suppose. But yeah, it's looking quite healthy in terms of Indonesia, Southeast Asia for the most part. India, North India in particular has been very wet over recent weeks, and China has been rather wet. I just wanted to kind of show you that. Looking at Eagle, I think it is, probably not the right pronunciation, but never mind. Interesting tweet here showing that the stratospheric polar vortex will remain weak in both hemispheres over the next few weeks, which is a rather remarkable simultaneity, is it? Simultaneous anyway, for the southern hemisphere as well as the northern hemisphere. This could mean an increased chance of cool, wet spring after the coldest winter since 2012 for Australia. So modelling is indicating that the 10 millibar winds, both within the southern as well as the northern hemisphere stratospheric polar vortex, will actually remain weaker than average. And you can see that as we move out of September into the early portions of October. The thick red line is the average. So this is the strength of the 10 millibar wind that circumnavigates the polar vortex. Remember, the polar vortex is beginning to increase in strength. Those winds then increase around it as the column becomes colder. This circulation is like a giant area of low pressure containing cold air. That becomes stronger as we head through the autumn season, but it's expected to be weaker than average, and that may lead to cold outbreaks into the middle altitude region. So this is something that we're going to be watching as well. Even in the coming week, we'll probably discuss this, so I would encourage you to stick around. Let me just see if there's anything else of particular note and interest to show. So let's have a quick look then at Volcanic on Twitter and see some of the extreme events that have been taking place over the last 7 days. So we've got here, insane hailstorm hitting southern Beijing, China on Saturday night, so just last night. Heavy hail and wind gusts in excess of 73 miles per hour. It was the most severe hailstorm in the city in recent years. So let's check this video out. It's pretty wild stuff. Some obviously quite intense thunderstorms moving through the Chinese capital. Big old fireball moving through La Pampa, Argentina yesterday. This was the scene here. Sudden windstorm hit the Corrielos Festival in San Angel in Colombia yesterday afternoon, sending people scramble for shelter. Several festival structures were damaged, but authorities confirmed there were no injuries. Check this out. Probably quite miraculous, actually, that there was nobody injured with that. It looks like flying sheets of metal, isn't it? So let me just see here. Let me continue to look through here. Looks as if we've had an earthquake of 5.9 measured in Assam, India. This was back 4 hours ago. Just continue to check here what's happening. Looks like a rather nasty scene coming out of Punjab and Sendai provinces. Over 900 deaths and more than 4 million affected with flooding. So yeah, Pakistan, August 2025. So that was back last month. Stunning water spout. This was from 6 hours ago in Varese, Italy. Some active weather moving through parts of Central and Southern Europe. This was in northeastern Spain in the province of Barcelona. Thunderstorms, flash flooding. Yeah, looking rather soggy to say the least. Again, more hail and wind footage coming out of Beijing, China. Another record broken. So it was the wettest September day, and it was also, I think it was the wettest winter in decades, I believe, for Sydney, Australia also. This was the scene in southern Mexico. Let's move on then. Again, another scene here. This is from the Philippines, and I think this is going to be a very common scene over the next week or so in the Philippines. So clearly people getting rescued there in the floodwaters. So obviously our thoughts are with those folks. Again, this is a scene from Catalonia, northeastern Spain. This was in Sabah, in Penampang in Sabah, Malaysia. So Sabah being the region province. Again, remember the MJO has been active in Southeast Asia, hence the flooding in in Bali, up in Malaysia, obviously this being an example, and then up in the Philippines, eastern portions of China as well, when you've got that enhanced lift within the within this region of the world here. It tends to enhance an already wet part of the world. So obviously part of the title is that winter is gaining strength within the high latitudes. Obviously we've still got a lot of warmth within the mid latitude pattern, and that is relatively typical for the time of the year. But let's have a quick look then at snow projections as we head towards the back half of month one of meteorological autumn within the northern hemisphere. This is latest current snow, latest current, same thing, northern hemisphere snow and ice cover across the northern portions of the planet. You can see here, not a whole lot to speak about. And again, we're still early. We're only in the middle of September. But if we look at this chart here, this is a GFS 2 meter temperature forecast for the 2 meter level. This is actual air temperatures projected by the model. Again, you've still got plenty of heat, as is typical, south of the Himalayas, up into the southwest China plateau, for example. We've got cooler conditions, and then further down in elevation, you've got still plenty of residual warmth. But you can see here as we play through this loop, we do have some waves of chill coming south into the eastern side of Siberia, of Russia, towards the middle portions of this week. So you can see here potentially temperatures in the teens in the parts of eastern and northern Russia. Again, this is what you would expect to see as we progress through September. But nothing major, nothing imminent in terms of severe cold or major snowfall. But nevertheless, it is a sign of progression of the season. And if we look at this very same model in terms of snow projection, you can see here that we go from this as of today, Sunday the 14th, and we'll play through this loop, and you can start to see as that colder air comes down, the snow expanding. We've probably got an Arctic front that's associated with that little lobe of Arctic air coming out of the polar regions here in the eastern portions of Russia. The higher terrain of southwestern China is going to start to turn whiter and whiter. Parts of Mongolia is starting to see snow, northwestern China. Look at Scandinavia. Interestingly enough, we are going to start to see some snow, and in the western areas of Russia, we're starting to see snow expand as we progress from now through Tuesday the 30th of September. So, yep, winter is going to slowly gain strength as the darkness continues to become more expansive across the high latitudes of the planet. Looking at North America then, in fact, let's look at Europe. Let's specifically look at Europe. And this is the here and now, so nothing really to speak about. Play through the loop. And you can see here that parts of Norway, Sweden, Finland, starting to see a little bit of decent snow accumulations, which is probably a little bit in the early side, especially into the south of Norway and Sweden. That's interesting, isn't it, to see that in the parts of Norway, Sweden, Finland, and then the Alpine region as well. Again, nothing really unusual for the time of the year. So that's that. Let's have a look then at the months to date in terms of, helps if we get to the right chart with our bell. So let's have a look at the month to date so far in terms of temperature anomalies, and then we'll probably round things up there. So let's look at the CDAS months to date. So this is so far over the United States. Quite a chilly look over the east. We do have heat building eastwards right enough, so that may start to kind of ease off in terms of the depth of blues, at least anyway. Let's look at Europe, and we're starting to chip away at that warm anomaly. Back during the course of the week, there was much more of the UK in the kind of orangey colours, which was representative of warmer than average. You notice here we're starting to peel away to the white colours, which is around about average, even below average now over Ireland. That's interesting. Look at Iberia. Much of Iberia is actually cooler than average, which is a surprise in some respects. Look at France. Much of it around about average, maybe a touch below it across the southwest. Parts of the Western Alps is cooler than average. Northern Italy, warmer than average. Norway, Sweden, Finland, into the east of Europe here, warmer than average. Let's look at Asia in terms of the temperature anomaly then. You can see here much of Kazakhstan and Mongolia below average, northwest China below average, as well as the south of the country, northern and northwestern India into Pakistan, where it's been very wet. We've got cooler than average here. Much of central and eastern China, Korea's, Japan, Southeast Asia, warmer than average. The northern portions of Saudi Arabia into Israel, Lebanon, Palestine, average to below average, which is quite interesting here as well. And then let's have a look at Africa. Again, like we've seen quite a lot this year so far, quite a mix and match of cool versus warm compared to average here. Much of the south of the continent has been firmly warmer than average. We've had actually quite a warm winter, I believe, down here. Eastern side of the continent as well has been largely warmer than average, but into South Sudan, for example, and equatorial Africa away from the west has actually been cooler than average so far this September. Looking at Australia then, you could argue 50-50, but the central and western Australia firmly below average. Around about average away from the north in Queensland. So we've got slightly below average in the south of the territory, warmer than average in the north. Then New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia, largely warmer than average. Average around about in Tasmania, and a mixture over New Zealand. And then this is the global view of the temperature anomalies, and really North America and Eastern United States really stands out. In fact, North America and Northern Europe stands out in terms of extremes. Look at Eastern and Northern Europe, very warm September here, and look at North America, very cool Ontario and Central and Eastern United States, very warm across British Columbia. I think British Columbia is the epicenter of what has been an incredibly warm first half of September here. Lytton, British Columbia, exceeding 40 Celsius. And I think somewhere else in British Columbia tied the national record for September for Canada, which is quite interesting. So that's the anomalies. Massive thank you to Braemar, Ballard and Deeside Weather. You're always very kind, my friend. Thank you for the kind donation. That is very generous of you. So, yep, let me just see here. I'm going to round things up. Have you enjoyed today's content? Let me know in the chat. Hit that like button. That also lets me know that you've enjoyed it. And also hit that subscribe button. I know I keep repeating myself here, but a busy week coming up here on the channel. It was a busy day yesterday with not one but 2 video uploads that you can watch back at your leisure. So, yeah, a massive thank you to everybody for being a part of today's stream. I will be back the same time next week, Sunday, the whatever date it is, and it will be at 4 p.m. as usual. And then the following week, I hope to have the winter update live stream at Saturday the 27th, if memory serves me correct. Saturday the 27th of September. I'm going to do the winter update, but I'm going to do it live from my dad's house down in Kirkintilloch in the Central Belt. So that is the plan for 2 weeks' time, to talk winter, to discuss what I'm thinking so far. There is some interesting things going on in the, not just the models, but also with the sea surface temperature profile. There's something resembling 2013-14, by the way, so I'm not going to say too much on that. Cold blob in the North Atlantic, warmth within the North Pacific. Yeah, there's something that's kind of nagging me with regards to 2013-14, and if you remember back, that was a very stormy winter. It's also one of the coldest winters in recent memory in the United States and the East. So, yeah, interesting times to come, and I hope you can be a part of it. Good afternoon to Sing Splint as well. So we've got Sing Splint, Paul James, and we've got Lindsay all moderating. So a massive thank you to yourselves for your ongoing fantastic support. But also a massive thank you to everybody else for being a great support to the channel as well. Stop That Luca says, hello, first time live watcher, enjoying the content so far. Cold, wet and windy in Plymouth today. Well, thank you very much for tuning in. I am just about to round up, unfortunately. But thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you for your comment and for your kind words. And stick around. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already done so. Massive thank you to Lindsay for the thanks sticker. Thank you to Chris at Braemar, Ballot and Deeside Weather for the kind donation. You're always very generous. Thank you to Turbo String, Jack Lowe, Stop That Luca, to the Training Nature Show. Who else here? I'm probably going to repeat myself, but I always like to go back through the chat just to give you the shout. Suit Plays JD, or GD, should I say. Film 2, quite interesting. So yes, thank you very much for tuning in. Is it Ewan or is it Hulwin? I think that's Ewan, is it? I do apologise. I'm probably insulting you, my friend, but it is not intentional. Vags Divs also, thank you for tuning in. To Alan Jeffs, to Luca, to David Vogan. I think I've already said Training Nature Show and Jack Lowe. Richard Gray. Thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Sunday evening, what's left of the weekend. Have a great week ahead. Look after yourselves. Stay safe. I hope it's a good one. And I'll be back with the European Outlook at around 5 p.m. as usual tomorrow. Full week of content coming up, so stay with me for that. Bye for now.